I'm very irritated because I just recorded so much of this and it just, technical difficulties, man. So, I'm trying again. Doing strictly audio. I feel like it makes my life easier. My face was gonna be in this, but not anymore. You can just deal with it. So, I read A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I didn't like it. I gave it 1 whole star, maybe more than it deserves. So I'm gonna talk about why I didn't like it. But before I start that, I feel like I have a couple of disclaimers. So first of all, I've never read any of the other books in this series. I don't know if I'm going to. I might, but it doesn't really matter. I've also never interacted with the fandom, so if I say things that have already been said, forgive me, like, I genuinely didn't know. Everything here is my thoughts and my opinions, and that is another thing. These are my opinions. If you like Sarah J. Maas, if you like this book, please don't attack me. And also, I think it is important to remember that you can agree with what I'm saying and still continue to like it. Like, the two can coexist. But anyways, I guess I'll start by telling you the kind of structure of this. So, I'm gonna go through the beginning to the end, like the whole thing. There will be spoilers because I'm going through the entire book. And then I will go through kind of character observations, things that I noticed, whatever. So, first thing that happens. Feyre is hunting in the woods and kills a giant wolf. Feyre is the main character. She wonders if the wolf is a fairy because of how big it was and thinks about how she doesn't like fairies. The fairies live separately from the humans because there was a war, and now there's a treaty. It's not that complicated, but I don't want to explain it. Feyre's family, which consists of her father, and her 2 older sisters, Nesta and Elaine, are poor, but they used to be rich. Nesta and Elaine are quickly identified as the mean one and the nice one. Nesta as the mean one, Elaine as the nice one. Feyre is the provider of the family because her father's legs were ruined by, I'm pretty sure it was debt collectors. It's not really that important. So, she sells the wolf pelt at the market, and then a beast breaks down the door of their small house. Cool. He talks about the wolf Feyre killed, and says that he would either kill all of them, or take whoever killed the wolf to Prythian. I'm editing right now, and I just realized I forgot to say what Prythian is. It's like where the fairies live. So, yeah. Feyre's mother's dying wish was for her to protect her family, so she goes with him. And I have added a lot of quotes in here, so. The quote here is, "I'd hear that promise I made 11 years ago as she wasted away on her deathbed. Stay together and look after them. I'd agreed, too young to ask why she hadn't begged my elder sisters or my father." So, yeah. And here's another quote, when he's still trying to... Okay, this quote is from when Feyre confesses to being the one who killed the wolf, and the beast seems kind of skeptical. He blinked and glanced at my sisters, then back at me, at my thinness, no doubt seeing only frailness instead. "Surely you lie to save them." And this kind of confused me because I know Feyre does all the work, and I know that she's like the underappreciated one in the family. So maybe, sure, she gets less. But like, they're all in poverty. Like she does all the work, but they're all not really eating. So I don't understand why she's the only one who's obviously thin. But maybe I'm nitpicking there. Before she leaves, she tells Nesta that the man she's betrothed to is problematic, and I also have an issue with this. Also, I use the word problematic really just for lack of a better word, like I couldn't think of anything else. So the quote here is, "Whatever you do," I say quietly, "don't marry Thomas Mandray. His father beats his wife, and none of his sons do anything to stop it." Nesta's eyes widened, but I added, "Bruises are harder to conceal than poverty." And what I'm sitting here wondering is why she didn't say that before. If she knew that her sister was going to be marrying into an abusive family, why did she withhold that information? How long did she know for? When was she planning on telling her? That's not like a fun little piece of trivia that you could save until the wedding. No, that is something that once you find out, you should be telling her immediately, right? Like, am I going crazy? I don't know. Anyways, they arrive at the spring court, and by they I mean Feyre and this beast thing. The beast turns into a more humanoid thing, and she learns that his name is Tamlin. And I knew a little bit about this book before I started reading, and I knew that Tamlin was the name of the love interest, and when I found out that this was Tamlin, I wasn't thrilled. That's all I have to say. She also learns that there's a magical blight in the land that is tampering with the Fae's magic. So the quote here is, "A sickness in their lands, affecting their magic, draining it from them. A magical blight that might one day spread to the human world. After so many centuries without magic, we'd be defenseless against it, against whatever it could do to humans. I wondered if any of the High Fae would bother warning my kind. It didn't take me long to know the answer." So, I guess, like, RIP to the humans if the blight spreads to them. I don't really know what to say about that. Anyways, all the fairies in the spring court have masquerade masks attached to their faces, because I'm pretty sure they were at, like, a masquerade party when everything happened. So Feyre becomes friends with Lucien, who lives in Tamlin's manor. So Lucien and Tamlin are, like, besties or something. She focuses on breaking out and going back home to her family, and she doesn't let herself enjoy her time in the court, which, honestly, given this quote that I'm about to read, I probably was not hard not to enjoy her time there. And do you ... love anyone else? Tamlin said through clenched teeth. And then she responds, and then she thinks, these lethal, immortal beings really had nothing better to do than this, which it does factor into the plot later on. But I was kind of thinking the same thing. But anyways, Lucien tells Feyre to talk to the Suriel. I don't know if I'm saying that right, so forgive me if I'm not, but the Suriel will answer any question of the person who traps it, and he tells her how to trap it, and he does it in kind of a funny way, because he's like, no, definitely don't do this. Definitely don't take my knife. Definitely don't do... Here's an itemized list of things that you should not do. You know, obviously being sarcastic. But Feyre traps the Suriel, and it tells her some stuff, so I've kind of made a really short list. So it tells her that Tamlin is a high lord, and he rules the spring court, so he isn't just like a citizen, he's like the guy. It tells her that to remain safe, she has to stay with Tamlin, and it tells her that there's a land called Highburn that is ruled by a king rather than being separated into courts, and that this king doesn't like the treaty. He wants his human slaves back. Feyre and the Suriel get attacked by the Naga, who are blight fairies. And at this point, the Suriel says, "Human, you must free me and run," it said, those death-filled eyes widening. "Run for the High Lord's manor. Do not forget what I told you. Stay with the High Lord and live to see everything righted." And this kind of reminded me of, like, if you've ever watched, like, a shark show or shark movie or, like, anything with, like, monsters in it, like, this might remind you of, you know when, like, the big scary thing is there and everyone's scared, but then the big scary thing runs away, and it usually means that it's because there's a bigger, scarier thing coming? That's kind of what that reminded me of. But, yeah. So she lets the Suriel loose and runs away, and then Tamlin saves her. And this scene is what kind of sparked my main issue with Tamlin, because he says, "Do I want to know what you were doing out here?" And this is my main issue with him. He sounds more like a parent than a potential love interest. And I think later on he is seen for what he is, because I've heard, like, people here and there call him, like, controlling, toxic, whatever. But the red flags are so glaringly obvious even now when they aren't together yet. He is portrayed, like, as a hero in this whole thing, and that bothers me because there are so many red flags. He reprimands her like she's a child, and that really irritates me. And even when they get back to the manor, it says, his mouth tightened. I'd start shouting, but I think today was punishment enough. Like, again with the reprimands, I know this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but Stockholm Syndrome, it's like, okay. So, Tamlin tells her that her family thinks she's taking care of a dying great aunt, and that her family is being cared for. She realizes that with her promise fulfilled, she can try to enjoy herself, and she starts painting again. She really liked painting before, but she had to stop because she couldn't afford paint anymore. So Tamlin and Feyre have some bonding moments, and he gives her fairy sight, which basically just means that, like, all the fairies in the manor, like Alice is, like, her main servant, like, the main servant that has been assigned to Feyre. She can now see them for what they are. Before, they just kind of look like humans because they were glamoured, but now she knows what they actually look like. So I have a couple bonding moment quotes. So one of them is, "This was my favorite haunt as a boy," that was said by Tamlin. "Which was when? I couldn't stop the question from coming out." He cut a glance in my direction. "A very long time ago." He said it so quietly that it made me shift on my feet. A very long time ago indeed, if he'd been a boy during the war. I hate age gaps like that so much. When I was getting into this, when I first started reading it, I thought I was going to like it, because if you think about it, the concept of it is very similar to that of The Cruel Prince. A human girl is in, like, the fairyland, and she can't leave, or she doesn't want to leave, she can't leave, whatever. And then she falls in love with a fairy, and it's like an enemies to lovers moment. Cardan in The Cruel Prince is 19 years old, and Jude is like 18 or 19. They're the same age. In this, I forget how old Tamlin is, but he's like 8,000 years old or something. And Feyre's 19. Like, yes, she is a legal adult, but it's weird to me. I'm sorry. You know what? I'm not sorry. It's weird. Anyways, this next bonding moment was about Lucien, and he's my favorite character, so it made me kind of sad, but it's like backstory, you know? And this is Tamlin speaking. He said, his father had her, Lucien's girlfriend, put down, executed in front of Lucien, as his 2 eldest brothers held him and made him watch. And that made me sad, because I really like Lucien. Okay. The Great Rite, also known as Fire Night, happens. And I have a lot to say about this, but I'm just going to read what happens, read the objective facts, before I get angry. So Tamlin tells her to stay in her room for this whole ritual, but I don't think he explains why, so she doesn't. She is almost assaulted by 3 fairies, but another fairy comes and rescues her. She quickly gets away from him too, but, you know. The quote from when this fairy rescues her was, standing before me was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. I'm literally exhausted. Anyways, Lucien sees her and brings her back to the manor and tells her that the rite is to replenish Tamlin's power and that it's unsafe to be out because when his power is being replenished, he's not in his right mind. And the quote here is, I will provide context after, but the quote here is, but hearing that, ... that some feral part of him wanted me, ... my breath was painful. This whole ceremony is a canon excuse for Tamlin to be able to do whatever he wants to whoever he wants, and he wouldn't face any consequences. And, like, basically, the hearing that some feral part of him wanted me, that's because Lucien said he will, like, come for you if he can smell you. Because there are a lot of very animalistic terms thrown out when talking about the Fae. So basically, if he knows where she is, he knows where she is, but if she is in, close proximity to him, basically what Lucien is saying is that he will assault her, and it will be her fault because he isn't in his right mind, and she went outside when she wasn't supposed to. And I wrote kind of a blurb here, so I'm just going to read that. Fire Night is a canon excuse for Tamlin to be able to assault Feyre with no consequences. That is this whole ceremony. The reason Lucien whisked her away from the main event was that in this world, Tamlin can justifiably go feral and assault Feyre, and he can't be blamed for it because it's his magic or whatever. He likes you and he might assault you because he's feral tonight. It wouldn't be his fault. It would be yours for going outside when you knew you weren't supposed to. No. That's disgusting. That is so disgusting. And the fact that Tamlin literally cornering Feyre and physically restraining her, like, that's what sparks their tension. She hears that the ritual has stopped. She thinks that it's over. She thinks she's good because she can't hear the noise from it. So she leaves her room and he corners her. Like, it makes me so angry. Like, what was that, Sarah J. Maas? Explain it to me right now. Why did you do this? Why was this necessary? Like, it wasn't. Anyways, I'm very upset. So Tamlin and Feyre get together, and to illustrate kind of how I felt during these scenes, I will read what Lucien was saying. So the first quote, Lucien shifted in his seat, muttering to the cauldron to spare him, but I ignored him. And then the next one is, I'm trying to eat, Lucien said, and I blinked, the air whooshing out of me. Girl boss Lucien moment. I love him. He's the best character. Although, and I can't make this video without saying this, Lucien did actively participate in the whole Fire Night thing. He is my favorite character, and I'm only mentioning this because of how much I talk him up later in my character observations. But he did participate. He was the one who said, it will be your fault if anything happens. And that's just gross. It's disgusting. So, the fairy from Fire Night, the one who rescued Feyre from those 3 fairies, he comes to the manor, and Feyre learns that his name is Rhysand. He sees her even though she's glamored and hiding behind Lucien, and he threatens to tell Amarantha about Feyre, but she doesn't know who that is. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Feyre tells Rhysand that her name is Claire Better, who is actually a girl from her old village. And then Tamlin sends Feyre home. This whole encounter really spooked him. He says it isn't safe for her anymore, and she doesn't want to go because she loves him, but she doesn't say that. And the quote here is, so I said nothing as the carriage moved. and I did not look back as we passed through the manor gates and into the forest beyond. And this part kind of bothered me because the note I left when I was reading, I left not a lot of notes when I was reading, but the note I left was, I'm so bored. And this is supposed to be like an intense part. The fact that I was bored here proves something that I'll go more into later, but it's basically just how she balances the plot. So anyways, she gets home and finds that her family is rich now. Apparently Tamlin's version of taking care of her family was giving them money, which, like, fair. She also learns that the dying aunt thing didn't work on Nesta, and Nesta knows what actually happened to her. And here's a little Nesta monologue for you Nesta stans. Your beast's little trick didn't work on me, she said with quiet steel. Apparently, an iron will is all it takes to keep a glamour from digging in, so I had to watch as Father and Elaine went from sobbing hysterics into nothing. I had to listen to them talk about how lucky it was for you to be taken to some made-up aunt's house, and how the winter wind had shattered our door, and I thought I'd gone mad. But every time I did, I would look at that painted part of the table, then at the claw marks further down, and know it wasn't in my head. Which, like, that's pretty girl boss of her. She is also no longer marrying Thomas. And instead of being like, oh, she listened, oh, she realized that she was marrying into an abusive household. No, Feyre goes, why had Nesta changed her mind? And she didn't even change her mind because of the whole abuse thing. This irritated me because she didn't even leave him because of that. She left him because he wouldn't help her search for Feyre. Why even mention the fact that he might be abusive or that she's marrying into an abusive household if you were never going to bring it up again? I don't understand that. But anyways, Feyre finds out that Claire Better's family was killed and that she was taken by fairies. She realizes she needs to go back to help Tamlin, and Nesta agrees to take the family far away. Feyre gets back to find the manor in shambles and Alice infodumps. Basically, Amarantha was the Blight. That's who that is. Her sister was killed by her human lover, so she hates humans. Here's a quote from Alice. Oh, Jurian, the lover, betrayed Clythia, the sister. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. After months of stomaching being her lover, he got the information he needed, then tortured and butchered her, crucifying her with ash wood so that she couldn't move while he did it. And Amarantha became the High Queen after tricking everyone. Here's another Alice quote. Now they call her the Deceiver, she who trapped the 7 High Lords and built her palace beneath the sacred mountain in the heart of our land. And I went in a rant about my notes about the plot not being balanced, but again, I'll talk about that later. Amarantha cursed Tamlin because he didn't reciprocate her love for him. She would restore his magic and remove the blight if he could make a human who hates fairies fall in love with him within 49 years. And the quote here is, the girl could only be brought here to be courted if she killed one of his men in an unprovoked attack. Killed him for hatred alone. Also just a side note that my friend actually brought up, not me. I didn't really realize this until she said it, but Feyre straight up wasn't born yet. So, make of that what you will. So it turns out the part in the treaty about, like, her having to go live at the Spring Court, that was fake. And Tamlin sent the fairy wolf to be killed. It was all by design. All Feyre had to do to break the curse was to tell Tamlin that she loved him before she left the court. And she did not. So, that actually kind of bothers me, because it's such an annoying, like, example of miscommunication. I already hate miscommunication, but, like, the fact that she was thinking that she loved him and then she didn't say it, she made a point. Sarah J. Maas made a point to write that and then not, like, that just kind of irritates me, but I think that's just a trope thing. I don't know if that's, like, a writing thing, but anyways. Feyre goes to Amarantha's court and identifies herself as the human who loves Tamlin. Tamlin is always next to Amarantha and he never speaks. Amarantha shows Feyre Claire's corpse and asks Rhysand why he said Claire was the girl Tamlin loves. Rhysand says that all humans look the same to him, but Feyre knows he's lying because he recognized her, like, when they were at the manor. When they were at the manor, he recognized her as, like, the girl from Fire Night. But anyways, Amarantha gives Feyre a riddle and says that if she solves it, she'll remove the blight, give all the magic back, and set everyone free. And I will read the riddle, and then I will read the theories I had when I was reading it. I had 2 theories, but I'm not going to say what the actual answer is until later. So if you want to theorize, go ahead. I don't actually expect many people to watch this, but, like, if you want to theorize, do it. But if you don't, I don't care. So here's the riddle. There are those who seek me a lifetime, but never we meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned I become a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lends a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. So my first thought was riches. I was trying to think of kind of the story and the plot and what's happened so far, and Feyre's family, like, a lot of this, she talks about her family a lot. Her family was rich and then poor and then rich. And I was like, okay, maybe there's something there. So seek me a lifetime, I thought could be people who spend their lives in search of money or power. Trample me, I thought people who squander their money, bad investments, risky deals, gambling, I don't know. Favor the clever and the fair, I thought of like rich people who seem to be rich or famous because they're beautiful or smart, but smart's kind of a different thing, but you get what I mean. Then my second thought, and the one I decided to keep as my running theory as I read, was love, and I thought of this because I was thinking about Feyre's character development. Jesus. So seek me a lifetime, I thought could be about people who spend their lives looking for a soulmate. Trample me would be people who take advantage of their loved ones. I don't really know on that one. Favor the clever and fair, I thought people with conventionally attractive traits finding love seemingly faster, or people falling for beautiful people or smart people. I thought brave enough to dare could be about people who are willing to look for or fight for love even when the odds aren't in their favor. Soft-handed and sweet, difficult to defeat, I thought could be the honeymoon stage of relationship versus their relationship being hard to get over if or when it ends. And then again, I do it slow, I thought could be about the pain or grief of losing a loved one. But Feyre does know the answer. She is kind of thinking about like deadly things like poisons and whatever. So Amarantha also makes Feyre go through 3 trials to prove her love for Tamlin. So it's 3 trials in 3 months, so 1 trial a month. The first trial is to hunt a giant killer worm in a maze, which she completes successfully, but she also gets very injured. Rhysand heals her in exchange for spending a week per month with him at his court, and he leaves a swirl tattoo on her arm and a tattooed eye on her palm. First of all, Kaz Brekker would never. He would never. So for context, Kaz Brekker is a character in Six of Crows, and I'm about to read a quote from Six of Crows. This one character, Inej, she worked at the menagerie before joining his gang. I don't know if that's what they call it, but the menagerie, it was basically slave labor. She was sold into it. It's like a brothel, but like, yeah. And she was like forced into doing it. She didn't want to. It was very traumatizing. And she had like a menagerie tattoo, and she got it removed and everything. But so one character is questioning her about why she doesn't have the gang tattoo, and she said technically the tattoo isn't optional. I know some people don't understand, but Kaz told me, he said it was my choice, that he wouldn't be the one to mark me again. And that just kind of reminded me of that, because with Rhysand, it's like, consent, we don't know her, I'm going to do whatever I want. But with Kaz, it's like, it's just so different. So I thought I would point that out. So, yeah, Feyre's thought process when, agreeing to this arrangement was, for Tamlin, I would sell my soul. I would give up everything I had for him to be free. And it's like, what's so good about Tamlin? All he ever did was treat you like a child until he wanted something from you. And I'm sure you can guess what that something is without me having to say it. But anyways, after she sees the tattoo, because that was not part of the deal, her thought process is, Tamlin, I could already see his face going pale, his lips becoming thin as the claws came out. Yeah, he has claws. I don't think I've mentioned that. I could almost hear the growl he'd emit when he asked me what I'd been thinking. Like, Tamlin is toxic. How does she still like him, knowing this is how he'll react? She gets a sick tattoo, and the whole purpose of this tattoo was to save him, and she thinks his first reaction will be to growl at her, and the fact that she's probably right, like, this man growls so much, like, you shouldn't be afraid of someone you're actively trying to save. Like, that is not healthy. But anyways, after completing some chores, Rhysand starts drugging Feyre every night, there are nightly parties at this court, and forcing her to dance in front of the whole court and, like, humiliate herself. Like, I hate Rhysand so much. I really do. I can't. Like, there's no getting around that for me. And at this point in the book, she was with Rhysand a lot. So I have a couple quotes here. This first one, I only wrote down because it reminded me of something that made me laugh. But here, I'm going to read it. Okay. Okay. Sadness flickered in those violet eyes. I wouldn't have noticed it had I not felt it deep inside me. My gaze drifted to the eye etched in my palm. What manner of tattoo exactly had he given me? And that it has nothing to do with the tattoo, and I forget what it's called, but this reminded me of that old Tumblr thing that was like, oh my god, the rare gene! Purple eyes and no body hair, and no periods, but still fertile. So, like, I think Rhysand has that gene. Like, can we look into that? Can we do some, like, investigating. Anyways, this other thing that happens is, there's, like, a traitor, and Rhysand kills him, and Amarantha was like, what the heck, I wanted you to torture him first, and he's like, oh, sorry, and then he leaves. And obviously Feyre's there, too, because this is a first-person POV book, and the quote here is, the crowd stayed far, far back as we walked through it. Whore! Some of them softly hissed at him, out of her earshot. Amarantha's whore! But many offered tentative, appreciative smiles and words. Good that you killed him. Good that you killed the traitor. And, like, that part makes me laugh so much. Because imagine you're walking with someone, and it's just, whore! Anyways, I'm sorry. That was really funny to me. So, the second trial has her in a pit with a fence in the middle, and Lucien is tied up on the other side. And the quote here is, Lucien lay chained to the center of the floor on the other side of the chamber, his remaining russet eye so wide that it was surrounded by white. The metal one spun as if set wild, his brutal scar was stark against his pale skin. Again, he was Amarantha's toy to torment, sorry. And that made me sad, because he's my favorite character. But anyways, there are 3 levers, and she has to pull the right one, or else she and Lucien will be crushed. The eye in her hand guides her to the correct lever, and both she and Lucien live, Tamlin finds her at the party, and they sneak away, but Rhysand catches them. And they don't sneak away to try and escape or anything like that. They sneak away to go and, like, make out in a room, which is, like, I mean, my priorities would have been different in that situation, but, like, you do you, I guess. Tamlin leaves the room after they're caught, and then Rhysand kisses Feyre. She tries to push him away, but she can't. And this part, I was so scared for her. I was terrified. I was just scared. But, yeah. So Amarantha comes in with Tamlin and catches them. So nothing happens apart from him kissing her. But nothing really happens when they get caught. Amarantha's just like, oh, humans. But anyways, the third trial is to kill 3 innocent fairies. There are bags on their heads, and she doesn't know who they are. Feyre kills the first 2. Not easily, but, like, you know. She kind of struggles a little bit, but she does it. And then the bag is taken off the 3rd fairy, and oh my god, it's Tamlin! Here's a quote for that. My hands slackened at my sides. Amber-flecked green eyes stared up at me. Everything came crashing down, layer upon layer, shattering and breaking and crumbling as I gazed at Tamlin. And that's kind of what I expected. I mean, I thought it was going to be someone she knew, but I kind of figured it would be Lucien or something. But, I was like, yes, kill him! I believe in you, you can do it! Anyways. She remembers people metaphorically saying that Tamlin's heart is made of stone, and she also realizes that she's never heard his heartbeat before. So, she stabs him in the heart, and unfortunately, she is correct in her assumption that he actually has a heart of stone, so he doesn't die. The fairies demand that Amarantha let them go and remove the blight because Feyre completed the tasks, but, Amarantha kills Feyre, because she never said she wouldn't if she completed the tasks, just the riddle. Before she kills her, she asks her, like, do you know the answer to the riddle? And Feyre's like, no. And then Amarantha goes, pity. The answer is so lovely. And that kind of made me laugh. The funniest part of the book, literally, apart from Lucien being tired of Tamlin and Feyre, because Feyre realizes that the answer to the riddle is love. Like, Amarantha was literally giving it away at that point. But anyways, she says it in her dying breath. And here's, like, a little monologue. The very main character, you know. For so long, I had run from it. But opening myself to him, to my sisters, that had been a test of bravery as harrowing as any of my trials. Say it, you vile beast, Amarantha hissed. Side note, she was trying to make Feyre say that she never loved Tamlin. She might have lied her way out of our bargain, but she'd sworn differently with the riddle. Instantaneous freedom, regardless of her will. Blood filled my mouth, warm as it dribbled out between my lips. I gazed at Tamlin's masked face one more time. Love, I breathed, the word crumbling into a blackness with no end. A pause in Amarantha's magic. The answer to the riddle, I got out, choking on my own blood, is love. Tamlin's eyes went wide before something forever cracked in my spine. Which, like, took you long enough, bestie. You literally had to say it as you were being murdered. But anyways. The fairies get their magic back, and Tamlin immediately kills Amarantha. All the High Lords come together to bring Feyre back to life. And she's also High Fae now. Which, like, whatever. Feyre and Tamlin live happily ever after. Until the next book, I guess. So, that was A Court of Thorns and Roses. Now I get to start on my observations. So, the first character I decided to write about was Tamlin. So the first thing that happened, the first kind of impression I got of him was when Feyre said, How long had he kept me unconscious rather than have to speak to me? When they were on the way to the spring court in the very beginning, he knocked her out because she kept talking, which I liked him for that. It made me laugh. It was a good first impression. But when he turned into a man, as I kind of mentioned before, I did not want him to be the love interest anymore. As I mentioned, he treats her like a child who's been bad 80% of the time. About 100 pages in, probably 50 in the physical copy because I read it on my phone, but Tamlin threatens the survival of Feyre's family, which obviously she's not a fan of. The quote here is, "But for him to hold my family's well-being against me, to throw away their survival if I stepped out of line, it's just another example of him treating her like a child who needs to be punished." He also kept doing this thing over and over again, and it says, "He lifted a hand as if to touch my arm, but he lowered it before his fingers could graze the fabric of my tunic." Like, he does that so often to the point I'm like, I'm so irritated, like, please make a decision. I'm so sick of you. And the man is always growling. I think I said this before, but it is honestly tiring. The only thing I actually like about Tamlin is that he is also on the official Lucian protection squad. But, like, I don't know. The way that he's portrayed as the hero of the story while also being toxic and manipulative and, like, low-key emotionally abusive, like, I'm not a fan. Anyways. Lucian observations. He is my favorite character. He is unflinchingly loyal. He is also the funniest character, as was seen in his reaction to Feyre and Tamlin being gross, which I read already. Another quote from him is, "I might die of surprise," Lucian said behind me. "You made a joke, Feyre." He's literally a comedic genius. He was such a punching bag, which made me really sad, and that was seen with him being tortured by Amarantha multiple times, his brothers at her court, Rhysand having a grip on his mind. That kind of happened. It wasn't really that important, but he has this power where he can, like, see people's minds, I guess, and, like, crush them if he wants to. But anyways, his brothers are bootlickers, which must be so sad for my boy Lucy. One quote from when they were at Amarantha's court was, I don't suppose your handsome brothers know, Lucian," Amarantha purred. "If we did, lady, we would be the first to tell you," said the tallest. Literally a bootlicker. I'm so tired. He was always helping Feyre, whether it was when she was injured or during the trials, whenever he could. Someone slipped into my cell and swiftly shut the door, leaving it just a bit ajar. "Feyre?" I tried to stand, but my legs shook so badly I couldn't move. "Lucian?" And then, during her first trial, it says, "Then, shattering the silence like a shooting star, a voice, Lucian's, bellowed across the chamber, 'To your left!'" So he helped her, like, a bunch of times. He's genuinely loyal to and cares about Feyre, regardless of the oath he swore to Tamlin. He swore an oath that he would keep her safe. And then this happens after she gets the tattoo and Tamlin sees it. Or not Tamlin, sorry. Lucian sees it. "I risked my neck for you during your task. Was that not enough?" His metal eye whirred softly. "You offered up your name for me. After all that I said to you, all I did, you still offered up your name. Didn't you realize I would help you after that, oath or no oath?" I hadn't realized it would mean anything to him at all. So anyways, that's it for my Tamlin observations. Now it's time for my Tamlin and Lucian observations. So, the first moment I started shipping them was when Feyre said, "You worry about him." Because I was like, oh my god, he worries about him. Anyways, next was when Feyre was eavesdropping on their conversation and it said, "I could glimpse the two of them standing almost face to face." Like, are they about to kiss? Like, what's going on? Lucy also helped Tam kill Amarantha. "Tam!" Lucian cried over the chaos. Literally, he is in love with him. Also, until the very end, they're both Fae. For most of this book, Feyre was a human. So, what that means is that Tam and Lucy, they have the same lifespan. They're closer in age. Tam knows he can handle himself, so he wouldn't be as controlling as he is with Feyre. Like, I don't like Tamlin, and Lucian definitely deserves better, but you cannot tell me there wasn't something there. Anyways, Feyre. So, first of all, she needs to raise her standards. One thing I did like about her was that she's determined. She doesn't let her mortality get in the way, which I like, but her motivations and loyalties, in my opinion, are flawed. Basically, she needs therapy. She's annoying in the way that only main characters can be, and I do have quite a long quote that I'm going to read, if I can find it. Wait, literally, where is it? It's gone. Oh wait, I found it. Okay. I looked out towards the mountains again, considering. And maybe it's because there was no one else to hear. Maybe it was because in the shadows his eyes would... Wait, what? Maybe it was because the shadows in his eyes would also forever be in mine, but I said, this is after she becomes high fae. I'm an immortal who has been mortal. This body, I looked down at my hand, so clean and shining, a mockery of what I'd done. This body is different, but this, I put my hand on my chest, my heart, is still human. Maybe it always will be. But it would have been easier to live with it, my throat welled. Easier to live with what I did if my heart had changed too. Maybe I wouldn't care so much. Maybe I could convince myself their deaths weren't in vain. Maybe immortality will take that away. I can't tell whether I want it to. Anyways. Crickets, literally. But she's also bad at riddles. Like, that riddle was really easy. I got it almost right away. She's also annoying. And her character development was very predictable and therefore very boring. At the beginning of the story, she said, love won't feed a hungry belly. And she also said, there is no such thing in regards to hope. And at the end of the story, she has that whole thing of figuring out what the answer to the riddle is. So, also, about her and Tamlin, their relationship seemed very underdeveloped, and I couldn't figure out why. I couldn't find the words for it until my friend Sabrina, shout out to Sabrina, until she kind of put it into words for me. And she said that in this book, and in a lot of other books like this, the relationship is solely built on lust. So that's why it feels like the relationship is underdeveloped. They don't have that much of an emotional connection. They just don't have that. Like, their whole thing kind of is just lust. Which, like, not my favorite thing, let me tell you. So my next observation was the balancing of the plots. And this is, I left a note, and it was one of those voice-to-text things because I couldn't be bothered to type it, so I'm going to read it exactly how it's written, and I low-key forget what it says. So if I need to clarify anything, I will, but here's what I said. So this was when Alice was kind of info-dumping. So you're telling me that this book could have been so much more interesting, so much earlier on, if they had brought in this character and, like, explained her whole thing earlier on in the book, it could have, oh my god, like, I know that the slow burn romance thing was, like, necessary, in air quotes, but, like, this would have been so much more interesting if they could have done both. They could have done both, is all I'm saying. Like, it could have been both. Like, there are so many boring, dull parts in this book, and it's just, oops, I fully closed it. And it's just so much nothing for so long. Like, why didn't they bring this in earlier? I don't understand. And now, another line that I kind of... Not another line. Anyways. Oh, I wrote it down here. So, another line that it kind of had nothing to do with the line itself, but here's a note I made when I was reading. So the line says, here with a high fae. It's nothing to do with this line, but I have so many pages left. It's like I said before, but in my opinion, this book is so much filler, and it makes it incredibly daunting to finish. So in my mind, this book is separated into two parts. The first part is Feyre building a relationship with Tamlin and a friendship with Lucien, while also learning very basic information on the world. The second part is her going home and then to Amarantha's court. If she could have either balanced the plots or made it two separate books, it would have been more enjoyable. If it was two separate books, it could have been, first one, romance book. Second one, things start to go wrong, and oh, crazy. And at first, I was like, listen, I am not the professional author here. I'm not. This is not my business. This isn't my place. I don't know what I'm doing. I cannot propose a solution for this. But then I got bored, and I wrote a different series of events that could have happened. And keep in mind, I know this isn't perfect. I'm not a professional, but it's just kind of the first thing I thought of. So, Feyre arrives at the spring court as it's written. She learns about the blight. While trying to find a way home before trapping the cereal, she hears Tam and Lucy talking about a she. Feyre demands to know what they're talking about, confronting Tam because she perceives him as the alpha. I only put that word in because, we all know how much Sarah J. Maas loves her animalistic terms. And she doesn't deserve it, but I thought I'd give her that. Tamlin obviously can't say anything about the curse. That's one of the conditions. And after this conversation, she gets the info from Lucy about the cereal. Lucy is Lucian, by the way. I've just been calling him Lucy. After she gets some info from it, she confronts Tamlin again with new information, and he tells her about Amarantha without telling her about the curse because he can't. When did it say he couldn't mention Amarantha? And if it does say that, I'm changing that. This is my version. I can do what I want. After learning that her family is being cared for, Feyre focuses herself on learning as much about Amarantha as she can. In my version, Tamlin isn't controlling, and he allows her to help in the ways she's humanly able to. While she does, she gets closer with Tam and builds a friendship with Lucy. Fire Night is completely removed. It doesn't exist anymore. The tension comes from Tam and Feyre spending an increasing amount of time together. Anyways, they would get together around this point. Rhys shows up like in the book, and it freaks Feyre out because in my version, she already knows a fair amount about Amarantha. She goes home briefly. The party doesn't happen. There's like a party, but it's like boring, so I didn't mention it. She sees what happens to Claire, and the stuff with Nesta happens, except she recognizes what Feyre said about Thomas's father. She goes back, and Alice infodumps about Amarantha's sad past, but for not as long, since she already knows some of it, she mostly focuses on Tamlin's curse. Feyre goes to Amarantha's court, and everything is mostly the same, but the time between the trials is mostly time skipped. Another difference would be that Rhys does not drug her every night, because I hated that. Instead of her dying and coming back, she simply does not die and is just very injured because I don't like resurrections. That's just kind of a personal bias thing. Because, like, make a decision. Kill them or don't, but, like, pick one. And that would be how it ends. My last point is about diversity. 99% of the characters are described as having moon white skin, pale skin, porcelain skin, or just other words for being white. The only character I can remember who is described as having brown skin was immediately murdered by Rhys. Also, everyone is cishet. When was this book released, actually? When was it released? 2015, which is, like, longer ago than I thought, but it's not the Dark Ages. Like, like, I don't know what she was doing, man. That's probably all I have to say. I can't really think of anything else. I think I've said everything that needs to be said. So those are my thoughts on A Court of Thorns and Roses. Took me 2 days to write the script, a month and a half to finish the book. The script is 19 pages long. This recording is now at 41 minutes. The last recording I did that didn't work was up to 30 minutes. I'm so tired. I think this book put a curse on me because I have been in a reading slump ever since I finished it. Like, I'm so tired. But yeah, that's all I have to say. Please, if you disagree with me and you want to tell me that you disagree with me, I would ask you to be respectful. But, like, I'm not your mom. You're gonna do whatever you want. But if your comments are mean, I will just delete them. I don't care. Anyways, yeah, that's it. Bye, I guess.